Europe was divided, and rising tension between Austro-Hungarian Empire and Serbia was at its peak. On the day of July 20th, 1914, a new chapter of Europe was destined to be written. The ultimatum to Serbia to hand over the killers of Prince Archduke Ferdinand was over, and Europe was at the brink of the war. But nobody knew the catastrophe of this war. Millions of people were killed, millions were wounded and homeless. The devastation that ensued made this the Great War as we know it today. This was called the War to End All Wars. Obviously, it didn't happen, but in 1914, it was evident that nationalism, imperialism, and industrialization have taken the world to a point of no return. When Austro-Hungarian Empire declared war on Serbia, the Triple Entente and Triple Alliance came together and devastation followed. But what made this happen? Germany has been termed as the responsible party for World War I by many historians. But what did the Germans do? How did Europe got to a point of no return? The story started 44 years ago with the German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck and German Unification. After the collapse of Holy Roman Empire in 1806, the dream of German Empire was pursued by many. Over 500 independent princely states, barring a few, were pushing for the United German Empire. Of course, there were religious, cultural, social, and linguistic barriers, but the seed of just German nationalism was rooted in European ecosystem. In 1850, German Federation under Prussia's Hohenzollern's dynasty challenged Austria for the leadership of the German Foundation. It didn't go well with Prussia, and they had to settle for somewhat a humiliating treaty at all modes. Otto von Bismarck was a mere politician then, and did not become a German nationalist either. He spent years in Frankfurt, then in Austria, and realized that Austrian hegemony over the German Federation must be destroyed. He became the ambassador to Russia, of Prussia, and then also went to Paris as an ambassador to the court of French Emperor Napoleon III. Prussia, on the other hand, was looking to build a strong case for the leadership of the German Foundation after the humiliation in 1850. Emperor William I of Prussia was aggressively seeking ways to increase the military size and bring military reforms. However, the liberal politicians were completely against it, and despite all efforts, William I could not make much progress. He did something that changed the course of European history. He appointed Otto von Bismarck as the Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Prussia and called him back to Berlin in 1862. Bismarck, with his immense knowledge of the foreign policies and excellent political wisdom, drafted a plan to reform the military with taxpayers' money. Bismarck formed an alliance with Italy in the planning against Austria. Prussia under Bismarck was looking for an opportunity to go for the kill, to end the Austrian hegemony, and in 1866 they found it. Schleswig and Holstein were held jointly by Austria and Prussia, seized from Denmark in 1864. Dispute over the administrative challenges started in January, and after the diplomatic exchanges, the two kingdoms were up against each other by the middle of June. Part of the Austrian forces had to face Italy in the south. The disciplined, fast, and modernized Prussian army was just too much for Austria. On August 23rd, by the Treaty of Prague, the Austria-Prussia War was formally concluded. Schleswig-Holstein was assigned to Prussia. Prussia later annexed Hanover, Hesse-Kassel, Nassau, and Frankfurt as well, almost immediately. In the Peace of Vienna, October 3rd, 1866, Austria also ceded Venetia to Italy. By this time, Prussia truly became the leader of the North German Federation. However, the German-Prussian hegemony over Europe was far from the truth. The strategies of Bismarck did threaten the hegemony of France though. Bismarck knew for the dream of the German Empire, France needs to be defeated. But France was a great military power. It was economically strong, had colonies in different parts of the world. It wasn't easy for Prussian Empire to go and defeat France. They needed a plan, and Bismarck had one. The plan was not only to defeat France, but to humiliate the French and create a new German hegemony over the entire Central Europe. Bismarck wanted a war and wanted the French Emperor Napoleon III to declare it. He did get a chance, but this time from Spanish Empire. Political instability and rage of people were high in Spanish Empire. After years of misrule, Queen Isabella II was abdicated from the throne. She was proclaimed queen after the death of her father, Ferdinand VII. She was the eldest daughter of Ferdinand's fourth wife, Maria Cristina. She was in the minority ruling with her mother and General Baldomero Esperanto. Her accession disputed by the followers of her uncle, Don Carlos. This resulted in the Spanish Civil War. In 1943, Esperanto was deposed by the military. The personal rule of Isabella II began. Her reign was full of political instability, uprising, and her private life added fuel to the fire. She was married to Francisco de Assis de Bourbon. However, she lived apart from him. Her reign was mostly controlled by the military officials. The political interferences and her private life finally caught up, and in 1866 an uprising began. Two important generals of the army, Ramon Mariano Vaz and Leopoldo O'Donnell, died in 1868 and 1867 respectively. Her days were numbered, and in the autumn of 1866 she was driven in exile. She went to Paris, and after she was abducted. She went to Paris after she was abducted. The story turned here. Bismarck, along with de facto ruler of the Spanish Empire, Juan Prim, persuaded Leopold of Hohenzollern's Sigmaringen dynasty for the Spanish throne in 1870. He was related up to the Prussian royal family. He was, in fact, the cousin of King William I. This was an alarming and threatening development for France. Emperor Napoleon III sensed a great danger of a united Prussian and Spanish force against France. The immense pressure from the French Empire finally took away the candidacy of Leopold. The French demanded that his name should never come again for Spanish throne candidacy. However, Prussian Emperor William I was not ready to budge down. Bismarck knew that he has few days before the Franco-Prussian War to commence. But this wasn't about the French anymore. It was about the dream of German Empire. He needed the support of North German states. Prussia was already leading the North German Federation, where the states of Bavaria, Württemberg, Baden were crucial states of the South German Federation. Both Berlin and Paris were inching towards the war, but Bismarck needed the France to declare it. He drafted a cunning plan and used the weapon of dishonesty that would ultimately help him to build the German Empire. On July the 13th, Emperor William I wrote a telegram to Paris ambassador. However, when it reached Bismarck, he edited it and published it next day. The edited content was very derogatory and it provoked France to the point that France lost the entire control. France had a superior and modernized army. They were done with the games of Bismarck and declared war on Prussia on July the 19th. As planned, Bismarck reached out to the South German Federation and they eventually identified Paris as the Aggressor Party and thrown their support to Prussia. The dream of the German Empire was one step closer. The generals of Napoleon III essentially told him that they had a superior army. This was of course true, but covered with new nationalism, new gained confidence of the reorganized army in 1866. The French generals failed to see Prussian resilience. The French had two of the most modernized weapons of that time, chestnut rifles and mitrailleuse, the early form of the machine guns. But Germans were agile. General Helmut von Moltke knew that only chance Germans have to win the war was to surprise France. So he exploited this superior agility. Within 14 days of the war, almost 380,000 Prussian troops were at the battle forward zone. The French were totally confused, and the troops were either late or had inadequate supplies for France. History was waiting for the new German Empire, and the newfound dominance of the Second Empire of France was days away from being crushed. In the next video, we will cover the Franco-Prussian War. Stay tuned for the Asian Herald History channel. Thank you very much for watching. Please let us know about your thoughts and comments. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe for more such videos and we'll reach with more of you. Thank you.